Affairs don't begin in the bedroom. They begin in childhood. In the part of you that decided she needed to bury her truth just to be loved. The part that's now screaming to be seen. I'm Alex Croxford, and this is the Deeper Love podcast, where we name the shame, face the guilt, and help you find your way back to yourself. So let's begin. I remember one of the most transformative moments on the healing journey with me and my ex-husband after my infidelity was when our couples therapist said, cheating doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it was like I exhaled probably for the first time in about 2 years. And I want to reiterate, this episode is not about blame. It's about truth. So this isn't a point of you being able to go to your ex-husband or your current husband and say, it was your fault I cheated, because I am never advocating for that. But what I am doing is just allowing you to maybe step aside and look at the relationship from a different point of view. A non-emotional one where you can actually look back and potentially see what had been happening for years before you got to where you got to. One of the biggest myths that I really want to bust is that you cheat, therefore you don't love them. But this binary thinking traps women in shame, because I knew I loved my ex-husband. I loved him as deeply as I had the capacity to love at that point. And I was mortified that I could do something like this to someone that I really genuinely loved and cared about. Like, what does that mean about me as a person? How bad am I if I could do this to someone that I loved? Because according to society, cheaters are all bad people. Cheaters are people that are careless and only go after what they want from their desire, and they don't care about anybody else, and they're cruel and heartless. And the truth is, I didn't believe myself to be any of those things. Except now I was starting to wonder if I was. Most of us who ended up cheating on our partners were living in a disconnected relationship before the affair. And I think this is something that isn't spoken about enough, because it all becomes about the infidelity or the affair or the betrayal, and it becomes about the person that did it. But the truth is, there will have been disconnection in your relationship before you stepped outside of it. Most likely, there were times in which you felt betrayed by them, perhaps not with another woman, but perhaps they were working late every day. They were in the pub all the time, watching all of their sports games, or perhaps they refused to help you in the way that you needed to with the kids, and you were feeling resentful and angry all the time at them. We don't just wake up and decide to hurt someone. And the co-creation within a relationship that leads to an affair is a disconnection. And I would say, I don't even want to put a percentage on it, but a very high percentage of relationships truly are disconnected. Why? Because most people are disconnected from themselves. And you cannot truly be connected to another whilst you are disconnected from yourself. Okay, and you might be asking, what do you mean by disconnection from self? And I'm going to explain it to you. Disconnection from self is not always obvious. It doesn't mean that you know that you hate yourself, but it means that somewhere along the way, you stopped including you in your relationship, but also potentially in your whole life. And let me show you what I mean. Perhaps you stopped asking for what you needed. Maybe you never ever did ask for what you needed, even the small things like ask him to hold your hand or to come and sit with you and give you a cuddle whilst you're upset. Perhaps you feel lonely with them in the room. You're sitting next to each other on the couch, but it's like there is this invisible glass wall between you. So you scroll on your phone, you smile, you act fine, but inside you're silently screaming. Can you even see me? Am I even here? Or perhaps you censor your feelings because you're scared of being too much. Or you say, I'm fine, when actually inside you are raging. Or you smile through dinner and cry in the shower. I definitely did that. Or perhaps you rationalize your unhappiness. You tell yourself, he's a good man, he hasn't done anything wrong, I should be grateful, perhaps I'm just expecting too much. And in doing that, you are gaslighting your own truth. Or maybe you only feel alive when someone else sees you. For the rest of the time, you feel flat or numb or empty, but you're walking down the street and you're looking around to see which man is looking at you. And if there is a man looking at you, suddenly you feel alive, like you matter again. But this is what I mean when I say betrayal doesn't start in the moment that you cheat. It starts in the moment that you stop being with yourself. Because when you have disappeared so completely from yourself, you'll take anything that makes you feel alive. So when I say that betrayal is co-created, it doesn't mean that blame is 50-50. We can't split the blame with our ex-husband or our husband. But the disconnection was shared. Because when we are disconnected from ourselves in this way, as I've just described, you are not being true to yourself and therefore to him or her, depending what relationship you're in. So there is a lot of missing truths. There's almost like this void between you. But I would argue that a lot of the time we find ourselves in relationships where it doesn't feel safe for us to be able to express how we truly feel. Perhaps we are scared because we know that they might laugh if we ask for a cuddle, or they're going to say no if we ask for them to come and comfort us while we're crying, or they're going to eye roll at us if we say that there's something wrong, or that we're upset, or that we have a need. Or perhaps they're so involved in their own world and their own life, they just don't have space for us. And however many times we ask, please, can I have some more time? I really want to see you. If we have it in us to ask us, most of us don't, including myself back in the day. If they say no, it's like we're proving that whatever else is in their life is more important, it is a priority. And so this just perpetuates this cauldron of disconnection. If he won't open up emotionally, and I'm not talking about in the same way that women do, because I think we do get confused that we want a man to be emotionally available and consider that the same as how a woman is. They're not. But if a partner won't even share with us what is happening for them emotionally, or if there is avoidance or shutdown or the silent treatment or a lack of physical or emotional intimacy, or perhaps there is chronic resentment from them towards you or from you towards them, or perhaps there is conflict avoidance. They're avoiding having arguments as much as you are. They're saying they're fine, slamming the door, leaving the house, and then coming back and pretending everything's okay again. Or if you are constantly managing the emotional temperature in the relationship, if you're constantly having to assess how you have to be in order for this to be a safe environment, then this is a disconnection within the relationship. And it happens all the time. I see it all the time in couples. There is so much resentment, or there's so many things that are unsaid, or there's so many unclear boundaries, or so many times something will happen and the other one doesn't say anything because they're afraid of upsetting the other person, or they'll swallow a truth for years until it kind of seeps out in this venomous way. Just, it's low level. It's almost like you can't even notice it. There are obviously relationships in which this is very, very obvious, huge screaming rows potentially, or violent words, or even physical violence. But so often it's in the subtle places that we can't even necessarily see until someone reflects it back to us. But it's like, but now I just want you to take a moment. And I invite you to just ask yourself these questions, because this is going to really help you understand how you got to where you got to. There are so many times where we have swallowed our truths and we have stayed quiet and we have not shared what is true for us for fear of them leaving us or them ending the relationship. And I want to invite you to just ask yourself these questions. This isn't about self-blame, but this is about giving you some clarity. Where did I stay quiet? Where or when did I say yes when I meant no? What did I need that I told myself I shouldn't? Because the truth is, in trying to stop somebody else from leaving us or rejecting us, we leave and reject ourselves first. And eventually, that self-abandonment, that self-rejection, spills out sideways. We try to find that need to be met, or that aliveness, or that desire to feel wanted and chosen and seen. We find it elsewhere. And it doesn't mean that it's okay. It just means that we now have a greater understanding of how we got here. So I invite you now, if you can close your eyes, then please do. If you're driving, please don't. But I want to speak now to the part of you who felt that she had to stray. There was no other choice than to look outside of the relationship. Because I want to speak to her directly, and I want to tell her that she wasn't evil. She was starving. She needed something real, or she needed something alive. She needed something that made her feel like she mattered, that she existed, that she could feel. And I really want to honor that part, because she was just doing the best that she knew how. She reached out in a way that she thought was the best solution to the pain that she was in, or that she was trying to protect you from. And that part of you had no idea of the absolute devastation and life rupture that it was going to cause. I believe your soul did. On the other hand, I believe there is a soul's cry when we are abandoning ourselves for too long, and when we found ourselves in a relationship which is a co-creation of that disconnection. And eventually the soul sits up and is like, you're not doing this anymore. It's time to learn the lesson. It's time to connect back to yourself. It's time to use this relationship to heal. And healing isn't easy. We often have to be taken to our knees for us to really sit up and listen. Because I'll be honest with you, I could have stayed in my marriage probably for the rest of my life in this disconnected state if I hadn't done what I'd done. I could have existed in that without really knowing or understanding that there was something much more for me, that there was something much deeper, that I could love and be loved in the most extraordinary way. I had to go through that enormous rupture in my life so that I could begin a healing journey, or I could go deeper on a healing journey to discover love. And as I said to you before, disconnection is very, very, very common in relationships. And when it becomes chronic, like it is for most of us, we adapt. We find ways to not even know. As I said, I could have been in that marriage for the rest of my life. And I just learned survival mechanisms. And that included numbness. I felt numb. I controlled my food obsessively. I over-exercised. I obsessed about my body. That was a huge way for me to escape the disconnection in my relationship. I focused fully on my own job, my own career. That became a priority. Partying. I would party really hard. I was in a constant stress response and I didn't know. It was just all survival. I was just in survival. I wasn't thriving in any way. But this was just how I'd learned to adapt. And this was my body trying to stay alive. And it wasn't a moral failure. It was just a symptom of everything that was happening underneath the surface. Remember, you are not broken. You are not bad. And you are not alone. I want you to also remember that you didn't destroy the relationship. The relationship had already stopped holding you. And you had already stopped holding you. This is what I want every single woman to understand. That they don't have to burden themselves with the blame for the rest of their lives. An affair doesn't happen in a vacuum. But healing won't happen in one either. And if something in you stirred while listening, if this cracked open a place you've been carrying alone, I want you to know you don't have to hold it by yourself anymore. That's why I create the softening sessions. Every other week on Zoom, we gather for 90 minutes in a space where guilt loosens, shame softens, and your heart remembers what it feels like to be held. You'll leave lighter, clearer, and not so alone. You can find the details in the show notes. I'd love to welcome you in. Thank you for listening to the Deeper Love podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're ready to go deeper, you'll find all the ways to work with me in the show notes. Until next time.